Got Your Eers On is brought to you by Tactical Legion 9.
All right, everybody. Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Got Your Eers On. Guido here along with Scoot.
Yo.
And Johnson.
That was fun, Guido. That was really fun. I hope we all enjoyed it.
WVU retains the Black Diamond Trophy with a win over Virginia Tech in Blacksburg at Lane Stadium, 33-10. They can take the Black Diamond Trophy, put it in the trophy case, and probably nail it down because it's going to be there for at least a decade, because chances of WVU and Virginia Tech playing again are probably pretty slim until the mid 2030s. So great win. It's fun, Scooty, that we finally got a win that at least means something a little bit, right?
Yeah, it's good win. I'd be lying if I said I didn't predict this win. I did. Yes, it was a good win.
It's a good win. Scoot, I'm trying to get a little bit. Scoot's trying his hardest to be positive about it. And listen, Scooty, I hear you. WVU looks good, puts up a lot of points. But, Johnson, I can't help but after watching the game thinking, wow, like Virginia Tech just handed WVU that game. I mean, Virginia Tech had 15 penalties for 132 yards, and Grant Wells must have missed at least, I don't know, a dozen wide open receivers during the game.
Yeah, and some of those wide receivers also let the ball just hit them in the face and bounce off to the sideline. I mean, it was bad, right? Like, look, I don't want
the worst skill players I've ever seen.
Well, I don't want to lean into, like, I knew Scoot was going to do the, like, yeah, but because I've really enjoyed this, and I really want to enjoy this, Guido. It was fun. I mean, look, we're going to talk about upcoming games, right? But because we always do each episode, we tweak our thoughts on that. But like, we've now had 4 opening games. Two of those games we cared so much about. They were so fun to watch. They practically set records of attendance at the gate. I think this game with Virginia Tech had 1.6. We saw John Antonick's tweet, 1.6 million views. It was like what was it, Guido? The most for a game on ESPN since like 2015 or something like that. I mean, to me, it's just a shame. You're talking about we're now going to be able to lock up that Black Diamond Trophy forever, and which is cool on one hand, because that's great that we now get those bragging rights forever. But it also sucks to me because this is a game that should just be played every year. So I was determined over the weekend to really enjoy this. I know it's a bad VPI team, but man, it felt good.
Well, and I think, yes, I mean, John Antonick's tweet that he had out there, the 1.6 million views, another Thursday night game where WVU owned the airwaves, or at least the rivalry, we should say, owned the airwaves. And I think that's the problem with it, is like, college football has gotten away from that, right? So like regional rivalries were the biggest thing. And we saw it with the Pitt game and, the largest stadium full of people ever in Pittsburgh. Like, let's just talk about that.
Yeah, come on. And in a historic sports town, that's quite a statement.
Right. And then now we go to Blacksburg. I mean, and listen, I will give it to, the Virginia Tech Hokie fans. That opening, like the energy that comes out of them playing Enter Sandman and everything that goes on there, that was great. It looked great on Thursday night. And so you had these 2 rivalry games with trophies and things, and now that's all gone, right? So now we face Texas and Baylor and Texas Tech, and we travel to, wherever. I mean, the Little Apple, as Scoot loves it, all that stuff. Like, it takes away from what college football should be. And I think that's what the point is I mean, granted, we're going to play Pitt for the next couple of seasons, but we're not going to see Virginia Tech again. I mean, I read one article, Johnson, that was like 2038 before there was an opening in both sides' schedule.
Yeah, I read the same thing, and that just makes you sad, doesn't it? It's just like one of those things like, man, we just watched such a cool thing Thursday. I know Virginia Tech fans couldn't have had fun watching the product that they have on the field, but that was an amazing game to watch if you're a Mountaineer fan. Everyone was totally engaged, totally focused. And now you're going to have to act like you have that same engagement and you're going to have to act like you care as much over the next 9 games of a Big 12 schedule. But Scoot, I would also argue, you and I were talking about this a little bit over the weekend. The only person I thought at points that didn't show a huge amount of energy in that stadium was maybe Virginia Tech's head coach. Like,
yeah, that guy, I don't know.
Kind of weird, right?
Like, they had 15 penalties. Several of them we were getting ready to punt.
Yeah,
or it was
drive
third and long.
extenders. Yeah, you're right.
And all of a sudden, we get a first down because some dumb, stupid penalty.
And they would pan to him, and he would be like, "Oh, I'm just going to
Quietly
note
taking
that
notes.
down for the
This guy
person
looks
that's
like he is,
whoever's in charge needs to know this. I'm going to take
whoever gets this next year will want to know that number 52
take
will
a note
sometimes
for
be
that guy."
offsides.
Like, it was the weirdest thing,
He
wasn't
often
it?
lines up in the neutral zone.
I would
instead of like ripping that guy's head off. Like, you're giving the game away. It also doesn't help that your skill position players are mediocre at best. Like, their wide receiver looks like a tight end on any other team.
He kind of looked like a big tight end, didn't he?
Yeah, like a slow tight end. Like, that guy's your big time wide receiver. Their running back couldn't do jack.
And Guido, I think we should also note that in the predictions for this game. So last week on the show, you took down some score predictions. Scoot laughed at us as we said WVU would extend. I said a 10-point win. You said what? An 18-point win.
18-point win.
And Scoot just scoffed. He scoffed.
Now, listen.
Scoot. He just scoffed at us.
What was the score to start the fourth quarter?
Like a big scoffer. He just scoffed.
Do we remember the score to start the fourth quarter?
It was still close. Yeah, it was relatively
16-9.
Okay,
16-9, and it's not.
It doesn't matter.
Fault.
We all put in our opinions for what the final score would be, Scoot. And I think I remember saying that I was like, they're going to pull away in the second half, which is what they did. But I'm not going to listen. We're not going to get into it because here's the thing. And you know, Brett Pry, head coach of Virginia Tech aside,
that's his name. I didn't even know that was his name.
Yeah, Brett
I just
Pry.
thought it was.
Well, they need to pry some energy out of that dude. He needs to grab the reins a little bit.
Yeah, he's new head coach. But anyways, take all of that aside. Like, WVU was handed this game. I mean, I will say, if you had told me that WVU was going to win a game and Bryce Ford Wheaton would only have 3 catches for 23 yards and no touchdowns, I would have been like, yeah, that's not going to happen.
Yeah, and I agree too with what Scoot's saying, because I mean, when it was 16-10, and Guido, I think we were texting at that point of the game. We were talking about, we had, I think, 301 total yards to their like 148 at that point in the third quarter.
Right.
And it felt like you're still letting this bad team hang around. I kept as the pessimistic optimist in me, as Scoot has labeled me over the last couple shows. I was waiting on the other shoe to drop. Like, what's the play that's going to be frustrating that puts them back ahead or something? Because it felt like we were just letting them hang around.
But let's talk about it, boys, because like stats don't lie, right? And I'm a stats guy. Scoot's not a stats guy, right? We've determined that.
Science.
You don't like stats, right, Scoot?
I'm okay with
Scoot
stats,
doesn't like numbers,
but I've been painted with a brush here. So,
but here's facts, right? So WVU. I mean, I will say, WVU handily won this game. I mean, 218 yards rushing, 203 yards passing. Great. Looked great on the offensive side. Virginia Tech was smart. Virginia Tech knew that they weren't going to run the ball against WVU, and they didn't try much to run the ball against WVU. I mean, they only had 35 yards rushing the whole game, but they had almost 200 yards passing. And to argue, the thing that won the game for WVU is 2 things, Scooty. One is they got more penalties than I think.
Oh man.
Like anybody I've ever seen in a game. Like, that was crazy. And second of all, Grant Wells, glad he didn't come to WVU. Like, he's like Jarrett Dagey light.
Well, I think I was in agreement with you that there were so many times that I think a more polished quarterback makes us pay, takes advantage of our secondary. I mean, he just didn't do that. And I also think the play calling didn't help him out there. Everyone and their brother tweeted, they ended up going for it kind of late second half, 4th and 1.
QB sneak out of shotgun.
Yeah, I think it was third quarter, 4th and 1. They put him in the shotgun and then asked him to sneak it. Like, none of that made any sense. It looked terrible on TV. And I almost felt bad for the kid because, I mean, there's even if, you're behind the 8 ball trying to make that successful. But I think when you, Guido, hold the ball for 15 minutes longer than your opponent, I mean, some of the box score notes are just insane. And I think you talked about, I think you talked about the rushing yards. I mean, they went for, I think I read something like their lowest rushing total since, maybe 6, 7, 8 years ago in a game. I mean, that whole perspective of it to me was just like, wow, this is not, Scoot, you would say this is not your granddad's Virginia Tech team. You know what I mean? They're trying to carry that beat up lunch pail thing that they really are committed to, that theme. And man, it just didn't work. I mean, we were running up yards on offense and they couldn't do anything in their running game. And it felt good. I mean, we just sort of took the game in hand and dominated.
Yeah, but they only attempted 18 rushes. They only tried to run the ball 18 times. WVU ran the ball 46 times, Johnson. So again, this is where it's going to rear its ugly head in the next couple of weeks against Texas and Baylor. Teams are going to try to throw over the top on WVU because the secondary is weak. Grant Wells couldn't hit the broadside of a barn with a football this past Thursday night. And Scooty, I don't think that's going to be the case as we move forward through the Big 12 teams.
No, but I will say this, you're not going to like hearing what I'm about to say. I feel that Grant Wells, I've never watched him play. This is the first time I've ever seen him play. And I've been to some high school football games, and I didn't know about him at all. I was actually, from everything I had read about him before the game, I was actually in the beginning, the first quarter, I was kind of impressed with Grant Wells. I thought, okay, he's better than I thought he would be. I thought he would be the worst. He was better than the worst. He actually ran better than I thought he would ever run. I didn't think he ran at all, but he led their team in rushing, did he not?
Yeah, I mean, he seemed mobile. I'll agree with you there. I just think they didn't help him out a whole lot. I thought the play calling was like vanilla at best. And I like I said, that 4th and 1 shotgun, quarterback sneak from the shotgun kind of sums it up for me. I think though, I wanted to ask your opinion, Scoot, on, I thought maybe you were going to talk about the secondary, because I know we have complained every week about the defensive secondary, and I know, look, I know I'm still enjoying this. And the cool thing when you win on a Thursday, you get to enjoy it for like 9 days. And I'm enjoying this for 9 days, right? I'm going to do it. Scoot's going to give me the, here goes Johnson, optimistic again. But Jacoby Spells on the pick 6, that was a terrific play. We malign the secondary all the time. I think we need to give him a little bit of praise. He came in earlier in the game. They had highlighted some of his play for getting in front of a receiver and kind of riding the play down without causing a pass interference and playing really good defense. Then later in the game, that pass, he just reads it and steps right in front of the receiver and then takes it to the house. I thought that was a great play. And it gave me this pause, like, can these guys, now look, there were other plays during the game. I was like, woof, if there's a more competent quarterback, he makes us pay there. But I'm just saying, can I be pessimistic optimist, Scoot, and say that maybe as these games kind of go through, do they get a little bit better? Now, look, I don't know that they're, because like take Spells, he's also a freshman. Like, I mean, these guys are like, they're learning, they're learning on the fly here, but can they sort of inch their way toward, you kind of
have to get better,
like competent play, as the season goes on.
You can hope for that. I mean, I think
can
that's
I pessimistically
reasonable.
Be optimistic?
You can hope for that.
that.
I don't know that that's going to show through here when we play Texas, Baylor, Texas Tech.
Yeah,
maybe you'll see some
teams that are going to light up the
things.
scoreboard more and fling it all over the place.
And I'll say this: Adrian Martinez looked good for Kansas State yesterday.
Yeah, he did. Yeah,
he somebody said that he got out of Nebraska's spell, or actually what they said was he was got out of he was like a released hostage from Nebraska. That's what he was like. So, yeah, I mean, they have to get better. That they're going to have to, because they're going to at some point have to be relied upon to win games. They're young. That's unfortunate for us, because there's going to be some growing pains.
Yeah.
Because they're going to be going up against some crafty veteran receivers,
right,
and some crafty veteran quarterbacks that are going to expose their weaknesses or some of their inexperience.
Yeah, and I think it's going to be one of those things where I was just hoping coming out of Thursday night it was like a shot in the arm, like because I know they've got to be here in the heat week to week. Maybe it was a shot in the arm for them.
Well, listen, I think I'm being honest here. I like to be honest with everybody. This is a needed win because if Neil Brown loses this game, he's then lost to both rivals. He's only beaten FCS Towson.
Right.
It's not looking good for him against Texas. It's not looking good against. Then you're looking at 1-5?
Possibly, yeah. Right.
Right.
That's tough to even think about. Like, you're getting to the point where what's the point in keeping him around for the end of the season?
Well, and I think you're right, Scooty, because I think I was saying it before the game. Like, I think if Neil Brown loses against Virginia Tech, he gets fired before the Texas game. I think now it doesn't matter. Like, I feel like now he could lose to Texas. He could lose to Baylor. Those are all expected wins. He could lose the rest of the season out.
It feels like this Virginia Tech win keeps it at bay for me. Like, he got through another week. It's absolutely a shot in the arm. It satiates the masses a little bit in Mountaineer Nation because this is a win everyone wanted so bad,
But Johnson, I'm still wearing my Crocs at the bottom of the hill.
Yeah,
like,
I know, and I'm right there with you.
Listen,
I
let
think,
me know if you want me to turn the bus around. We'll come back and get you.
Well, yeah, Scoot's already left base camp and gone back to town.
Scoot's left the base.
Scoot, one other thing I wanted to because I thought this was also really interesting. You too, Guido. So the other thing that was interesting about this game is Justin Johnson sort of steals the show along with C.J. Donaldson in the rushing department, and I thought it was very much. It couldn't be more obvious that it was at the expense of Tony Mathis. Tony Mathis has a fumble early, and then it's sort of like he goes into witness protection program. He's like in the doghouse the rest of the game. Yeah. I felt bad for him, but I felt really good for Justin Johnson, who sort of grabbed the opportunity and really played a terrific game. I mean, I don't know why we're so spoiled. We've come to expect C.J. Donaldson to have these performances, and at one point when he went out with a wrist injury, I was like in a fetal position, kind of ready to cry because I was like, please don't do that to me. I love this kid. Don't take him away yet. But then Justin Johnson comes in, plays a really great game.
Now, let me ask you guys a question. So critical me. Tony Mathis is in the doghouse, right? Fumbles the ball, struggles or whatever, put in the doghouse. We've seen Garrett Green be put in the doghouse before, right? Because in his case, it's not fumbling the ball, it's misreading. Instead of throwing the 5-yard bubble screen, he ran for 25 yards and gets chastised as he comes off the field for doing something too positive.
Right.
God forbid you bring too much excitement.
What were you thinking?
You need to sit the bench.
Right.
What were you thinking? You should have thrown that 5-yard pass.
Get over there and think about that.
Let's talk about Reese Smith.
Okay.
Real quick.
Oh yeah. Okay. Yes.
So
that's very
special
good,
teams. Scoot's gonna go special teams.
But let's listen.
Let's break it down.
How many muffed punts do we have to watch before we continue until we make a change and we continue to trot him out there? He's had at least 2, maybe 3 already this season.
Yeah, it's been rough.
Yeah, you're
right.
Listen,
I'm with you.
If we're gonna,
and here's the question I have for you, Scooty. Like on this, have we seen anybody else back there?
I haven't noticed
It's only been Reese Smith.
Yeah.
Now, listen, I don't want to bury the guy. He can still be out there. I don't care. I care, but if we're going to treat Tony Mathis a certain way, if we're going to treat Garrett Green a certain way, why are we letting Reese Smith have this super long leash?
Yeah, it's interesting.
And he's turning. It's
right. Because I have a feeling he's the only one. Like that's what makes me nervous. Is I don't think there's anybody else.
I have a theory.
Because who was that? Wasn't that Winston Wright and Isaiah Esdale? Hadn't they been sort of platooning, returning duties? Until they all left. But
yeah. I have a theory.
Okay.
This is not going to be a very popular theory.
All right.
Guido, do me a favor.
not much of what you say is very popular. I'm just saying you are probably the most hated podcaster in WVU podcasting.
Can you Google search or go on to West Virginia's roster on their website for
Okay.
me. Okay, I want you to
Yeah.
do me a favor. Can you find out where Reese Smith went to high school?
Oh, interesting. Hold on.
Oh, that's a good question.
Scoot, are you?
I mean,
You've been zaprudering some stuff, haven't you?
I think Scoot knows the answer. He wants us to look it up.
He wants us to
I know
come
Scoot.
to this dramatic realization.
He went to Boyle County, Danville.
Oh, interesting.
Is that where he went to
Danville.
school? All right, now do me a favor, Johnson.
Yeah. Boyle
Can
County
you
High.
do me a favor and Google research where Neil Brown went to high school, please?
Are we going to connect some dots here?
Why do I
or
feel
what?
like I think Neil Brown went to Boyle County High School, same place Reese Smith went to,
Interesting.
in Danville, Kentucky.
Is so?
did.
So you think he's
Is-
partial? He's
Yeah, I think he's
showing
partial.
partiality.
I think Neil Brown doesn't want to go home and hear about how he benched the local kid.
Out of all the kids, he doesn't want to
Yeah,
hear about
he doesn't
benching
wanna
the
hear about
local
that.
kid. Well, I
Or
don't
maybe-
know. It's a weird thing because I would have to think that there's other people competing for that spot. I don't really see how Reese has it locked down. I mean, I want to see
Like-
him be successful, but I agree with you.
He can be a
You-
great slot receiver. I don't care. But
Right,
listen,
sure.
if he's going to muff punt after punt,
It's right.
like that's not a great. And listen, let's come out and say this, right? How often are we forcing the other team to punt? It hasn't been very much. So it's magnified.
If you look at the depth chart, guys, Sam James is listed second.
He can catch a ball.
He's listed
He can
second
catch a
on
ball.
the punt returns.
Also, can catch a ball.
Preston Fox, who had a nice catch. Yeah, Preston Fox had that nice catch with Nico in the
I would venture to
FCS
guess
game
there
like
might be
that.
some defensive backs that could catch a ball.
well, where I thought you were.
Like you think
Yeah,
about Pac-Man.
Jai.
Pac-Man used to be a returner.
Well, I thought you were going to say
Yeah.
maybe you put Garrett Green back there is where I thought you were
Hey,
going.
I'd take that. That'd be a wrinkle. Listen,
I like this.
I'm not saying that there's a conspiracy going on, but
There's
for
a
whatever
conspiracy
reason,
going
listen, here's what's going on, right? And so, I guess I'm gonna link the two together, right?
Okay.
Jarrett Deggy, did he have some family connections
He did.
to Neil
yes.
Brown?
I feel
I
like
know.
I remember
I know.
that he did, Scoot.
Okay. And can we assume that there is, again, another strong connection between Neil Brown and Reese Smith?
I
At
think
the very
you've
least, they're from
established
the
one.
same
I
town.
think
I think
probably
you
said
just
yes.
established one. Yes.
So it seems as though Mr. Brown is a little soft for some of his
I
favorites.
mean, you can make the argument, and you, in fact, just did make the argument.
So I don't mean, maybe there's nothing to it, but I find it interesting.
Here's a question, guys, just to shift gears a little bit. Here's a question for you. Put yourself in the shoes of Graham Harrell and JT Daniels now. You are running an offense. You're a quarterback, you're a offensive coordinator, you're running an offense fairly successful, not having a ton of issues. I mean, there are things, but you've got, all the parts are working well
You're
together.
moving the ball. You're scoring points. You're
Right.
Yep.
And now you're coming into the conference schedule. You've got Texas, Baylor, Texas Tech, TCU. You get all these games coming up. You might be able to score against these teams, but
Yeah.
these teams are going to run the
Right.
score up against you. Like, how do you feel as Graham Harrell? Like, what are you thinking going into these games?
Well, I would venture to say they're probably feeling like it's kind of like I think it's probably kind of how I got really salty in the post game of Kansas, where one of the first things you heard was about JT Daniels' interception. And I got really salty because I was like, look, the guy scored 40 some odd points and threw for 1 billion yards. Like, what else was he supposed to do to keep you in this game? But one of the first. So that's the first thing that comes to mind is I can see over these next 3, 4, however, 9 conference games when teams are able to score competently as you're scoring, any mistake you make is probably going to be like put under the microscope.
Well,
would be my guess. Like you made
I
one
would
bad
argue-
read and it cost you because your defense couldn't get off the field or something.
I'd argue he's got one of the more stressful offensive coordinator jobs in America right now. You got to think 'cause he has to
'Cause
score.
he has to score
right. He
1,000
has to
points.
score
Yeah, right. You
every
have to score
possession.
every series.
Anyone
you
that
have
we
to
have
score.
to trot Oliver Straw out there, which I do like Oliver Straw. I think he's actually a pretty good weapon for us as far as changing the field position.
But you're right. When you see him, you're like groaning because you're like, we can't be punting. Like we can't afford this.
Because here we are. Yeah. Oh man. All right. So let's assume they're going to score. Then we've got, can we score? Can you get 13 or 14 for one touchdown? Can we do that? Can we petition somebody?
Do you guys think that the defense looked better against Virginia Tech? Do you think there was a marked, like, take out the Towson game and compare it to the Kansas game?
I'll say this. Now, I know I kind of trashed Virginia Tech's skill position players, but if you think about it, and maybe I watched a different game than you guys, I don't feel like our defensive line or our linebackers did a lot of pass rushing against Grant Wells. So I feel like our defense did okay stopping the run. Stopping the pass, we did a mediocre job. Now, maybe we didn't try to blitz. Maybe we were trying to drop into coverage.
Well, and I think there were so many times where the Grant Wells threw the ball and the receiver was open, but he overthrew him or threw behind him. There were so many. I mean, I could think off the top of my head 4 of those, Johnson, maybe even 5.
And I don't think it was because of pressure from us. I think it was just Grant Wells being inaccurate.
No, right. I don't think it was line. Yeah, I just think it's great.
I think they kept him clean. I think they did really good against the run. I think it's a little bit hard. It's funny how each week, I mean, look, I'm not going to go back on my preseason picks, right? We already agreed we're not going to do that. But I mean, I'm an engineer. I like data. I am going to tweak week to week my thoughts on this stuff as we get more info. And it's funny how now with 3 and some teams 4 games under your belt, like, Scoot, we've been talking, Jalen Daniels is amazing. Like, I did not really give him enough credit coming into our game with him. He is torching everyone. Now, look, I know they played Duke, so I'm bringing that up because I don't know that it's fair. Like, my torching of the defense in the podcast right after Kansas, like, now that we're getting some distance from that game and we see Kansas play, like, he torches Houston, he torches Duke Saturday. I mean, like, that Kansas game, should they have contained him better? Yeah. I mean, I'm not letting him off the hook, but I'm also saying, like, Jalen Daniels is the real deal. Like, he's fun to watch. He is fun in a read option offense. He is super fun.
I said this to you, Johnson. Maybe Guido too. I can't remember if you guys are all on the same thread. He is Kansas's Pat White.
Yeah, he is.
He's going to make I think he's going to make a difference for Kansas. He's going to probably change some. Now, granted, if Lance Leipold doesn't stay, that could get a little weird for them. Not weird, but just it'll go badly for him. But he could potentially be to Kansas kind of what Pat White was for WVU for that stretch. And, I think if there's no Pat White, does it lead to a Geno coming? I don't know. You know what I mean? So I think that there's some carryover there from the success of Jalen Daniels that Kansas is probably not going to be the laughing stock of college football.
Right. He's like a spark plug for the program.
Not even the laughing stock of the Big 12 this season, I don't think.
Right.
But here's a question for you. Who has more passing yards this season, JT Daniels or Jalen Daniels?
It's going to be JT. And I think our offense is doing a really good job. Listen, I know I poo-poo the results, and I don't really like I don't like Neil Brown. I'll say that. I feel like a change could be had there. But it was a great decision to bring in Graham Harrell. We've thrown the ball down the field more in the first 4 weeks of the season than we have in the first 4 years of Neil Brown.
Yeah, no, that's true. I would agree with that.
So that it certainly
feels that way.
Yeah, that already is so much different. And it wasn't all Daggy because we had people before Daggy. So to me, that was the offensive scheme that was the problem, not so much the person throwing.
But Guido, I think I'm sticking to my opinion. You and I talked. You had a reference for this early on, but after one game, we were talking about this. I still feel like I'm using an opponent's talent at offensive line as my barometer of how I feel about these games. And I think this Virginia Tech game is a little bit of an anomaly, maybe because even though they couldn't really, like Grant Wells, they kept him clean, I feel like, most of the night. it wasn't until late in the game, I think Alston had a sack that looked really good, but for the most part, they kept him clean. I just think, like Scoot said, Virginia Tech's other skill players didn't really make us pay for that stuff, for him
Non-factor.
being upright.
They were a non-factor.
I still feel like, I think you said early on, Guido, like Baylor, for example, has a super highly rated offensive line. To me, I'm expecting that game to be a long game for us, because if we can't put some pressure on and Dave Aranda can let his quarterback sit back and just pick, make decisions.
If we can't run stop against anybody, we're going to be in real trouble.
Yeah, I just think if whoever has really talented offensive lines, I feel like those are the teams I'm probably most scared about on the conference schedule.
So that brings us to Texas, right, guys? We face Texas this coming Saturday, 7:30 p.m. Primetime game, Fox Sports 1. Darrell K. Royal Stadium, Darrell K. Royal Memorial, Texas State, whatever it's called now.
Yes, right.
Texas loses last week to Texas Tech in a barn burner, if you will. But Texas relies on Bijan Robinson. Like Bijan Robinson leads the Big 12, leads a lot of the NCAA in, yards, touchdowns, all of those things. WVU's strength is stopping the run. Defensive line is strong. Does Texas switch it up? Are we going to see Texas pass? Or what happens this week where do we have, and this is, here's Scoot's going to yell at me when I say this. Do we have a chance against Texas? Hudson Card, not that great. Like, Hudson Card's not looking that great as a quarterback. He's okay. He's serviceable, but he's not, burning down the house. They rely a lot on Bijan Robinson, who right now has who already has 7 touchdowns this season, rushing touchdowns. So my question for you guys is, do you start to look at this Texas game? Is this a game we can get? Or am I just talking crazy, Scoot?
I think you're talking crazy.
Shut it down. Scoot shuts it down immediately. Is that some optimism?
Listen,
shut it down.
First of all, Virginia Tech isn't recruiting near the level that Texas is recruiting at. The skill position players.
Well, not with that slice of Melba toast on the sideline.
Right. Yeah, right.
I mean, that guy's not exciting anyone.
The skill position players are leaps and bounds better than Virginia Tech's. We're going to have a tough time. Like, I don't see this being a win. I didn't predict it to be a win. I still don't predict it to be a win. It's at Texas. That's not good for us. I don't see it happening. I just don't. And I'll be honest, can I listen? You say I'm not a stats guy. Here's a stat.
Okay. Stat.
Here's a stat.
This is a real stat.
Is this a real stat or is this out of
4 years? Neil Brown has never won 3 games in a row. Mm-hmm. So we aren't winning based on the history.
Scoot's got one stat. He's got one stat. He's just going to keep bringing it up.
I feel like
he doesn't have any other stats.
Like in 30 years or
he
whatever.
He never won 3 games.
Right. So my dad to this day, if something random comes up about Doug Flutie, Dad will just look at me without missing a beat and be like, Flutie never beat the Mountaineers. In like 30 years, Scoot will be looking at us. We'll be in some Florida rest home. He'll be like, Neil Brown never won 3 in a row. Well, I think the funny thing about this Texas game, and you're right, Guido, like even in this game, Bijan Robinson goes for over 100 and scores 2 touchdowns. I mean, by all accounts, he was getting it done in this game. I think Texas has a weird collapse late. I think at the half, they're up like 24-14, and they even extended that into the third quarter, and somehow Texas Tech comes roaring back late. So I don't know. It was a weird game Saturday for them. They lose in overtime. For me, when we were putting these picks up together early, before the season started, this felt like a surefire loss. I'm still with Scoot that it feels very lossy because I think it's a tall order to go in to Darrell K. Royal Texas Memorial Stadium or whatever and get a win like that against them, because they are a good football team. But I think it's more, Guido, I think it's more gettable than I ever thought at the beginning of the season. And I think the Quinn, shoot, I just lost it. I had a brain lapse and lost his name, but you know who I'm talking about. The Quinn Ewers. Am I saying that? his injury and entering, Card at the quarterback position, to me, they're still trying to figure that out. I'm not saying that was the reason for the loss here against Texas Tech, but to me, it feels more like they're trying to find their footing in this quarterback situation. Because didn't Card, he also dealt with an injury coming out of that Alabama game too. So I think it's more gettable than we thought at the beginning of the season. I think this is one of those games where, again, we score a ton of points. I think we once again put up, 30 some odd points. But I think we end up in like a frustrating loss. I think Texas has enough to keep us at bay at home.
Scooty, what not that I'm a betting guy, but I am. What do you think the over-under is on this game? What's your guess? I've got it in front of me. I can give it to you. But right now, we're a couple days out. What do you think the over-under is on this game?
I'm going to say 65.
That's not bad. That's a good guess. Johnson, what do you think it is?
Yeah, I was going to say like 61, 62.
62
wow.
is the over-under on this game. Considering you're coming off of, what was it, 51.5, 52.5 against Virginia Tech. Right now, Texas is favored by 9.5. Over-under is at 62 even.
So they think it's going to be a track meet as well.
Yeah, they think it's going to be, the teams are going to score like crazy, and that's, for me, that's tough. Like, I if you're like me and you like to place a dime, a nickel or two on a game, I mean, I think 9.5 is a solid number. I'm not sure West Virginia can cover that. I'm not sure West Virginia can meet that.
Scoot, don't you feel like we could have an Ollie meter for this game? Like, if the Ollie meter is rising, our chances feel worse. Like the Ollie meter could be a thing.
I'll say
in this
this.
game.
Here's what I'll say. Okay, I'm going to make a little weird prop bet here. Okay.
Okay. I like the props.
I think if Oliver Straw has to punt 3 or more times, we lose this game.
Oh man, that's not a lot of punts. That's not a lot of punts. Scoot. That's not a lot of punts. Yeah. I mean, we only punted twice, and we had a wonderful game at Virginia Tech. So.
3 or more, we lose.
Okay.
I don't think we can keep up.
The Ollie meter. Can I coin that?
Wow.
I think you can.
The Ollie meter.
Allimeter.
I like that. Hashtag.
Ooh, I got a great shirt idea.
Allimeter.
I got a great shirt idea.
We got to put some of these shirts out. We keep coming up with great shirt ideas every week. We don't put them out. We got to work on this. Here's what I think, guys. 9.5 is a lot. I still don't think West Virginia wins this game, and I think 62 is high. It's just so hard. Like, 62 is such a hard number for me, Johnson. I think Texas still wins this game. I'm gonna say Texas wins it 42-27. 42-27. I think Texas wins. I think the offense shows up. I think this is going to be one of the tougher defenses that JT Daniels in the offense sees. I think 27 will be good. I just don't think we're going to be able to stop anything. And I think that Texas is going to be smart and go over top, and they're going to try to do a little bit with Bijan, but I think it's going to be, you're going to hear more wide receiver names out of Texas. You saw it was Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech targeted Johnson 12
really? I didn't
receivers.
Wow. Okay. I didn't realize
on Thursday.
And they're all tight ends.
Yeah. I mean,
I don't even know where they got these. Some of these guys, they were like, hey, how do I check in as an eligible receiver? Like, it's a lineman.
They were pulling. The mascot took his uniform, took his
third on the
turkey head off,
chart
and ran out on the
right
field.
Guard was checking in as a wide receiver for them because they had nobody that looked fast.
So I think that's where I'm at. Johnson, what do you this week looking at the game?
Yeah,
what do you think?
I think you're onto something with this over under. It does feels like a lot. That feels like. Even though I have confidence in the offense, that feels like a huge ask to just keep up with that kind of thing. But I'm gonna say Texas, but I'm gonna say that Graham Harrell does dial some stuff up. I'm gonna say it's close. It's one of those frustrating, like, man, 1 or 2 plays and we would have really been in this thing. I'm gonna say Texas 38, WVU 35.
Wow, that's close. That's close, Scooty. All right, Scooty, lay it on us. WVU Texas. What do you think the score is going to be?
I think that's a good question. I feel it's going to be Texas 45, WVU 21.
Okay.
That's not a little worse than me, but not by much.
I'm laying with my over-under. And I think if you look, I mean, we had only scored 16 points going into the fourth quarter against Virginia Tech. And it wasn't until we got a little bit mojo going there, and then we got the interception for the touchdown.
Six. Right.
So that's really what kind of really stretched the score out for us. So our offense, while it looked like we were in control, we still had some sputters. And the Texas defense is going to be a little bit better than what we saw. So.
Do you think, I mean, we don't have to spend any time on this, but I guess that's the thing I was mentioning when, Guido and I were texting, like we had 301 yards to, I think they're 148 at one point in the fourth quarter. The score's still 16-10. And we just kept getting in position to cash in and having to kick field goals. I think, we're talking about the Ollie meter, and I still think the Ollie meter is going to be super relevant, Scoot. We're going to have to, what did you say, if he has to punt more than 3 times?
Yeah.
I think that's a good one to track too. I think if we get into that pattern where, we drive it down inside the 10 and then have to settle for field goals, like that's not going to get it done either. I feel like in a game like this, you're going to have to cash in almost every time.
Well, and you got to think, how many times did we get bailed out on the Ollie meter? The Ollie show would have been much more than a couple of punts had they not just been morons and given us first downs.
And got penalties so many free first downs, ridiculous first downs. So I'm with you. I'll set that Ollie meter, Johnson, at 3.5. We'll set the Ollie meter at 3.5.
Okay. All right.
I think that's a good place to put it. You got to do the half number. So under 3 punts, 4 punts, it's definitely a loss. 3 punts, maybe not. We'll see what happens. So guys, hey, I want to move on. So WVU wins against Virginia Tech. The next day, David Hale, ESPN staff writer David Hale, releases an article and talks about how ACC administrators have had informal discussions with both the Pac-12 and the Big 12 about possible additions or mergers, and kind of an article that got swept under the rug for the weekend. I saw it picked up by a couple of other places, but he puts out this whole article, and for me the biggest part is Jim Phillips, who's the ACC commissioner, said all options are on the table, and we would love to talk about renegotiating our TV deal. I don't know what that implications mean for WVU. I feel like for the ACC, at least, if that became a conversation, maybe WVU would be in the mix there, Johnson.
That's a weird one because I don't know. The WVU fan in me would hope that means that Virginia Tech and Pitt and the ACC in general sees these, viewership and gate numbers for 2 games that WVU is involved in where things are through the roof and look terrific on TV and are driving eyeballs, and they would come back around on being such snoots about not having the Mountaineers in the conference. But I feel like, that my first maybe pessimistic thought on that is, are they trying to do, how the Big Ten was like, hey, we should do a partnership. And then that partnership ended up being like stabbing everyone in the back, essentially. Is this one of those
right.
like, hey, buds, hey, buddy, old pals, we should all, form some kind of, loose merger where scheduling ties in and, that team's not in our conference, but you're on the schedule regularly, stuff like that. And that helps out a TV contract. But I would think if you're the Big 12, you're like, no, we feel like we've got some moxie right now, and we're gonna try to move on that. Wouldn't you think? That would surprise me if they didn't.
Yeah, Scooty. So that's kind of where I'm at. Like I felt like the timing of it, is a little bit auspicious in the fact that WVU plays an ACC school at the beginning of the season, largest Thursday night viewership ever, or not ever, but in 5 years for ESPN. Largest attended game ever in the city of Pittsburgh. They turn around and play Virginia Tech 2 weeks, 3 weeks later, whatever it was. 1.6 million viewers on that one on ESPN. Another ACC team. I mean, Scooty, maybe this is a little bit of a, maybe they're saying, hey,
a precursor.
Yeah,
listen, please don't tease me because we need it bad. We need it real bad. I think. Listen, if the ACC comes calling and there's any hesitation, I want Shane Lyons brought to my house just like the boss from Christmas Vacation. I want Cousin Eddie
with a big
fat ribbon on him. I want Cousin Eddie to go get Shane Lyons, bring him to my house if ACC comes calling and he hesitates. I don't want to sit and wait and see what the Big 12 does. If they've asked, we need to be joining because it's so much more enjoyable. Listen, am I down on Neil Brown? Sure. I loved watching the game at Virginia Tech. I love Enter the Sandman. I'm saying it. I put the in between the Enter and Sandman. I liked watching it. And to be honest with you, it was so cool. I even have some things that I think they could do to make it even a little bit better. I would cut the lights. And tell people to take out their cell phones and get the flashlight on their cell phone going and then play the music because I think that would be even like, exit light. Come on, that's a good idea. So I would do that. I think the Pitt game was amazing. And guess what's also awesome? There are so many people that live in the state of West Virginia that went to both. When was the last time West Virginia fans went to that many away games in a season?
Right.
It just doesn't happen. Nobody gives a crap about Iowa State. I don't care about Iowa State. They're not my rival.
What did I do?
To be honest with you, the only thing I knew about them before we got in the Big 12 with them is that they had Larry Eustace, and Larry Eustace liked college girls. That's the extent of what I knew about Iowa State. Don't tell me about Hilton Magic because I don't care. There's no magic in Hilton. Nobody knew about that arena beforehand. Nobody knows anything about Iowa State other than it's a maroon. They're the Cyclones, and they've got some sort of bird mascot, which doesn't make any sense because a cyclone is a tornado.
Well, and Guido, we had a link in some show notes a couple shows ago that we didn't really get to that was kind of an eyebrow raise, and I'm now thinking of it a little bit differently now that you're talking about this, but back on, let's see, middle of August, Brett McMurphy pointed to something in a tweet. I can put it back in our show notes for this week too, but where he was saying the Big Ten's, let's see, Kevin Warren, he's head of the Big Ten. I think he's saying that he sees the Big Ten having 20 members and paying players. And like, that was just like a hand wavy comment at the time. It makes me wonder if, this article that you're referencing, are these conferences, like we sort of get realignment in spurts as fans. I think, we get realignment news as like,
right.
It like, this ebb and flow of stuff, but I'm sure to these people that, the Jim Phillips and folks, it's like a daily conversation. I would have to think, you're constantly like trying to gauge the climate of what's going on with realignment. And maybe, is this offhand comment of, the Big Ten still expects to go to 20, are these guys still saying, okay, look, we're still playing defense and we still gotta be in talks to, what are we going to do when they decide to move? And are they moving in on ACC teams? And maybe he has some, feelings that he's, maybe susceptible. I don't know.
Well, I also wonder, like, starting to think about this and how, like, I know if you look at all the conferences right now, the ACC has like the worst television deal going into this. Like, they signed their deal in 2018, I think it was. It's through 2036. It's a crappy, not a great television deal. But I'm just wondering if Jim Phillips, ACC commissioner Jim Phillips, is starting to think, hey, we're not going to compete we're not putting teams, we're not going to put as many teams into these championships and playoffs as the SEC schools are and now as the Big Ten schools are, because they're trying to build so big. Maybe our angle is let's play to the rivals. Let's build our viewership on Thursday night rivalry games. Let's build our viewership on the Pitt WVUs and all of these these rivalry games that have been lost. And maybe that's the angle that they're taking with trying to get all of this, circled back up again with these 3 conferences that, are sort of these now not part of the giant super conferences that are going to explode with the SEC and Big Ten. And to be honest with you, like thinking about it, Scooty, I'd rather see WVU go to an ACC with a Virginia Tech, with a Pitt, with a Syracuse,
Louisville. Come on.
Instead of going to an SEC, or instead of going to a Big Ten.
Well, listen, Big Ten, I don't want any part of the Big Ten. I just Midwest, it's boring to me. No offense to people. Listen, I value a lot of our listeners in the Chicago area.
Penn State's not in the Midwest, though.
Yeah, whatever. I would much rather be ACC. I think nobody says no. Like, what West Virginia fan says, well, I really wish I'd like to stay in the Big 12. Nobody says that. Nobody says, I want to stay in the Big 12.
Right.
Well, but the weird thing, though, wouldn't you think, Guido, is now the painful other edge of this sword feels like if they did finally come to you, wouldn't it be prudent of you to pause and say, well, I'm actually getting ready to make way more money probably in this Big 12. I'm not super excited, but my payout per team in this new Big 12, if the negotiations go the way we've read, are on par or better than what the ACC is going to be able to negotiate. I mean, as a fan, yeah, there's no question. I want to do exactly what Scoot's talking about and play these teams. Yes, there's no question. Where do I sign up? Let me do it tomorrow. But I think if you're someone if you're Shane Lyons or someone in charge, you would have to at least figure out okay, but what's the is the money in fact going to be there?
Well, and I think it's enticing for both the Pac-12 and the Big 12 because both of their TV deals are up in the next 2-3 years, right? So ACC's locked in with ESPN for another decade. But I think that, if they merged or if they came together, they would have a much bigger bargaining chip against ESPN or Fox or whoever if they were hey, here's the deal. WVU and Pitt are going to play a game every year in perpetuity, or we're going to combine some of these rivalry games that we have.
Well, and Scoot, do you think I don't really trust ESPN at all as far as I can throw it. To me, they pull they
can change that. Listen, that 10-year deal can be changed.
Right.
Let's not.
They've ruined college football. Let's not mince it, Johnson.
Yeah. Well, and someone
football.
was tweeting the guys on the ESPN I don't know who tweeted that. I should have saved it, but someone tweeted the other day, they commented how the guys on the ESPN broadcast are look at this. Look at how great this is, a regional rivalry. Look at this packed house. And someone tweeted, says the people that got rid of all of that. Right.
So, the regional rivalries. Yeah, right.
I guess I'm just bringing up, do you think behind the scene, the timing of this article and everything, and the fact that the ACC is super connected to ESPN, do you think there's anything going on there? ESPN sees that and they're like, hey, ACC, that would be a great thing for you to do all the time or
Here's
something.
Here's something interesting. I mean? I'm gonna throw this out there, and I don't know that there's anything to it or not, but maybe there is. So UConn, right, former Big East foe
I'm
of
familiar.
Ours.
Right. Yes.
Okay. Well, they have Jim Mora Jr. as their head football coach.
Okay.
Well, probably not that one, his son. Yeah. So a couple months ago, he slipped up in an interview and said something about, maybe it was with a recruit or something, that eventually, or here in the near future, at some point, UConn was going to be in the ACC.
Oh, okay.
So going back to your, is there some behind the scenes talk or movement? I think there is. Now, what I was going to ask you guys is, they're not just going to take one school. If ACC is going to enlarge in some way.
Is that a word? Did you just make up a new word? Enlarging? I mean, I think that sounds like a word, but I'm not sure.
If the ACC is going to enlarge themselves,
grow, perhaps.
They're going to enlarge themselves. That's even worse in some ways.
So if the ACC is going to get huge, bigly, if the ACC is going to get huge, do they?
Oh, look at that ACC! It's
I'm just saying that's a big ACC.
That's a big ACC.
That's all I'm saying.
Where were you going with
Hey,
this?
Jim Phillips.
Bring the car
Hey, Jim
around.
Phillips.
Tell
Tell Dr. Newsy to bring the car around front. So,
all right, if the
Yes.
ACC is going to grow,
it's not
if the
going to be by
ACC is
one
gonna
school,
grow,
right? So it's going to be there's going to be multiples. So
Right.
who's the other schools that are going to, like, is it a UConn? Listen, I am from Connecticut. There's nothing appealing really about UConn other than basketball, women's and men's. The rest is soccer is good. But
New York's frying pan hat, if you will.
Right. Yes.
is it somebody like that, or could it be an ECU or a South Florida? Those are the other two schools that kind of come to mind if I'm thinking regionally and in a area that makes sense.
But wouldn't you think West Virginia would be a better ad than
Oh,
those two schools?
yeah,
No
yes.
offense to
No,
ECU,
no.
Johnson, but like,
No, I think West Virginia is the big, like, that's the primary target, but I don't think they can just add one, and it doesn't make sense to me. They're going to have to make it an even number. So
how much does the current state of West Virginia athletics, specifically football, affect their ability to change conference when this all starts to break free? Because I have a feeling, guys, that next offseason, summer of 2023, maybe it might linger into summer 2024, we're going to see this ramp up again. Like we saw it last year.
it'll ramp up. It's going to ramp.
A little blurb last year. Right. It's going to ramp up again, right? Like just like it did 8 years ago. What does the current state of WVU athletics, how does that affect?
Well, it's terrible. It's a shame that it's such terrible timing that we're having that, ebb into this low period of football, for example. But I think, I would like to think these stats that we were talking about of, like the 1.6 million viewers and
Viewership,
stuff that, even if, because look, if I'm being honest with myself, I don't think performance has played a role in quite a few of these moves, right? I mean, everyone said like Rutgers and Maryland moving around. I mean, that wasn't because of on-field performance. So I would think that if anything, it wouldn't, like, it's like, yes, Guido, I agree it sucks, but I would think that the viewership and gate numbers and stuff would still hopefully propel the conversation in the way that WVU would want it to go.
I think it'll just be interesting, guys. I think this isn't over. I mean, we don't have to deal with it.
For WVU, it's not WVU because of the rabid fan base. Even though it's a small state, it carries the whole state, not like a typical university does. The fans travel very well. The reputation of the fans' loyalty is well known. And there's besides history, there's a lot of recent history. Like I think of Owen Schmidt, and how everybody picked the whole country picked Oklahoma to beat us in the Fiesta Bowl,
right?
And we continue to come out on top. So there's a lot of intangibles that are sort of tangible, if that makes sense. It doesn't.
Tangible.
Would you say that it enlarges our argument for being one of those teams in the
I would
move?
never say the word enlarging, so I don't know what you're talking about. I would say it makes it look huge.
Well, I think though that Guido, these aren't any, like these notes we're talking about. This isn't anything new. These were our same arguments for us to be included in the ACC like two revolutions ago, right? So I never know. I think you're right. It's probably going to heat back up. It'll just be, I don't know. I think we'll be along for the ride again to see how things shake out for WVU and how these TV contracts, like does ESPN pull a fast one here and try to renegotiate things to prop the ACC back up? I don't know. That's the way that article you cited almost makes me feel now in that view.
Something interesting to think about too is, and I hate to tie this, but I'll tie it back to our current situation. So let's say Neil Brown struggles and we finish 3-9. Okay. And Shane Lyons is relieved of duties because he doesn't pull the trigger right away or whatever. Let's say Shane Lyons decides, hey, I'm done. I'm tired. I want to retire or whatever. A person that's new coming into athletics, that could change that whole dynamic as well too, right? Based on their connections with other places. And I think of like Oliver Luck and how he was so connected to sports management in general, that he's the big reason why we're in the Big 12. But maybe somebody else comes in that has a stronger connection to, I don't know, North Carolina or NC State or some ACC school and pulls us that way, or pulls us, in a different direction. So it's kind of interesting how right now, based on who we have as our leadership, we could see one thing happening. I agree with you,
Scoot, because I will say this: I would not mind to see Whit Babcock be the next athletic director at WVU, current athletic director at Virginia Tech. I think he would come back, WVU alum, worked in the athletic department, talked a lot about how he was very bummed about how the rivalry game between Virginia Tech and WVU was not looking like it was going to happen for 10 to 12 years. Whit Babcock might be one of those guys you want to add back into the fold. I think he would take the job. I mean, not to say, I don't know if West Virginia is bigger than Virginia Tech. I think they're probably equal jobs, but he is a WVU guy. We'll have to see. I think this does heat up guys over the next, next year or so. It'll be interesting to see where WVU falls. I hope we don't get left behind like we were last time when the Big East fell apart. Guys, one more thing I want to talk about before we wrap up today. A couple more things, actually. One is Ime Udoka, a name we've never talked about on this show. Head coach, or former right now head coach of the Boston Celtics, got in a little bit of trouble this past week. Apparently had some relations with staff members with the Celtics, and he gets relieved of duties. He gets suspended for 1 year. And former WVU standout, Fairmont State head coach at one point, assistant coach for the Celtics, and now interim head coach, Joe Mazzulla, takes over in the NBA for the Boston Celtics as their head coach. Johnson, kind of a big deal. I mean, I'm not sure the last time there's been a head coach from WVU. I think the last one I can think of, Mr. Jerry West, was coach in the 70s of the Lakers.
Yeah, Fred Schaus, but it comes to mind, but it's been years since I can think of anyone that coached an NBA team. Now, we always heard that Huggs had some overtures extended to him, but he never went that route. So I think this is huge, and I think it's something that I think that we've kind of been watching Mazzulla kind of climb that ladder through different positions, but to be tossed, to me, this is suddenly like, whoa, like, hey, we're calling you up to the big, like to the big show here, the big spot. So it's pretty awesome.
Yeah, Scooty, he is a New England guy. I mean, Mazzulla went. I think he's from Rhode Island.
Rhode Island, yeah.
Right. He went to Bishop Hendricken High School in Warwick, and so he's from this area. But came down. His coaching career after he left WVU, his coaching career kind of took place in West Virginia for the most part. He did a couple of years as an assistant coach at Glenville State, and then a couple of years at Fairmont State as an assistant coach. I think he did some...
I think he was also the head coach at one point.
Yeah, he did some G League coaching, and then he was the head coach at Fairmont State. Took him deep into the D2 championship there in 2019. And then he got called up, coach for the Celtics. He's been assistant coach since 2019 with the Celtics and sort of gets brought in. The interesting thing for me is it'll be interesting to see if Deshaun Butler gets put on the staff, because he and Deshaun Butler coached together in the offseason league, the summer league, for the Celtics as well. So congrats to him. It'll be fun to see that West Virginia connection in the NBA. We don't talk a lot about NBA on this podcast, but good on Joe for getting up and getting that position there in the NBA. It could be a big building block for him. I mean, we've always said,
right. That's what I was going to say too, Guido. Don't you think, even if it's just in this interim moment, I mean, hey, never hurts to have some success in that position and then maybe parlay that into some future head coaching. That'd be awesome.
We've always talked about Scooty too, that maybe he would be a name that would come up when Huggins does decide to retire. I think this might take it off the table, though.
Yeah,
if he becomes an NBA coach.
I think that it's very rarely do you see somebody go from the NBA back to college. I think of Fred Hoiberg. I think did that recently, where he was at Iowa State, then went to the NBA, the Chicago Bulls, and then went back. Now he's at Nebraska, I believe.
I guess Patino did that too, right?
Patino has done it a little bit. It's just not very common, and I would think it'd be even less common for somebody Mazzulla's age, right? Because those guys are a little bit older, so they can say that they've kind of experienced some things, and maybe they've realized that they like the college life or the college coaching life better. I wonder if our next head coach, and this is something we'll talk about later, but I wonder if he's currently on the staff right now.
Oh, spicy.
And I wonder if he is a grad assistant on the staff right now.
And you wonder if his name is Al Ruoff? Is that who you're talking about?
I'm wondering that could be somebody.
Oh, interesting.
I mean, he had a solid pro career. And he had a great college career, and I think he would be well received by West Virginia fans.
Yeah, interesting.
Well, speaking of which, guys, 1 month until WVU basketball hits the court and is on television. October 28th, Friday before Halloween, they play Bowling Green at the Coliseum for the Norma Ray Huggins Research Endowment Fund game that they play every year, the charity game that they play every year. That game is on ESPN Plus on Friday the 28th at 7 p.m., so we're not that far off. We're going to have to start talking basketball soon, guys. We're going to have to go back to two segments on this podcast.
I like it. I'm excited for it.
Happen.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. The WVU schedule was released, so if you haven't had a chance, check out WVUsports.com. You can see the whole schedule. Tough schedule, guys. I mean, between, we play Pitt in there, which, and we play Pitt at Pitt, at the Peterson Events Center, Scooty. That's what it's officially called.
That's right.
The Pitt. And then, but for non-conference games, it's kind of tough. We play Purdue as our first game at the Phil Knight Legacy Classic. Is it a classic?
You love a classic. You do love a classic.
I love a good classic. I do love a classic. But you also have Gonzaga, Portland State, Duke, Florida, Oregon State in there, Xavier. And then we also play, we could play, there's a weird chance that we play Xavier back-to-back because they're in the Phil Knight Legacy Classic, and then we play them December 3rd in the Big East Big 12 battle in Cincinnati. So that'll be interesting to see. And then at the end of December 31st, New Year's Eve, we kick off the Big 12
at the Octagon of Doom.
Yes, we go to the Octagon of Doom.
Oh, no, you're right. New Year's Eve in the Octagon of Doom.
And here's the tough part. Those first two games, New Year's Eve and then Monday, January 2nd, 2 away games to start the Big 12 schedule. We travel to Oklahoma State to Stillwater to play them at the historic Gallagher-Iba Arena. So,
is it really?
Is it really? But it'll be interesting. We play Kansas early in the season. That's January 7th. The new schedule is out for the Big 12, so definitely check that out if you get a chance. I'm excited. I'm excited for basketball.
You get Jalen Bridges returning to the Coliseum on January 11th. I'm sure I'm sure there will be nothing, no drama around that whatsoever. Probably.
Do you
right?
think Country Club asks for their money back when he shows up?
I don't know. That's interesting.
Do you think he tries to skip town real quick?
Before
they catch up to him?
We're going to need a refund.
Yeah.
Yeah. We'll see what happens. Well, guys, listen, we should probably wrap it up for this week. WVU football takes a win in Blacksburg, 33-10 over the Hokies. We travel this week to Austin on Saturday. Game time announced. That was in the 6-day window. So if you're listening and you haven't heard yet, that game is on Fox Sports 1. Primetime game, 7:30 p.m. So be ready for that. Another night game. A lot of night games this year for WVU. So WVU faces Texas on Saturday at 7:30. That game's on Fox Sports 1. Everybody, thanks for listening this week. Don't forget, you can find us online. Look for us on Instagram or Twitter at Got Your Ears. You can also find us on Facebook. And Johnson, we have an awesome website,
We do have an awesome website, if we do say so ourselves. It's gotyourearson.com. You can find the latest show here once we put it up in blog form. You can click on the TuneIn link right on the page to listen. And if you so fancy, click on the link to the merch store and check out the GYEO merch. Check it all out.
Yeah, check it out. GotYourEersOn.com. Thanks for listening, everybody. We'll be back next week. You've been listening to Got Your Ears On.